Hello and welcome to another edition of Witness. I'm Raggy Omar. The debate about climate change has, like global weather patterns, been heating up over the past decade. But the inhabitants of a tiny Alaskan fishing community called Shish Maref on the Bering Straits don't need any more proof. Their town and entire way of life is literally being washed away by the effects of climate change. Politicians have been reluctant to do anything about global warming for fear of damaging their economies. Now, even George W. Bush has admitted there is a problem and has pledged to do something about it. But whatever initiatives politicians come up with, it will come too late for the Inupiat people of Shish Maref. Each year, they lose more than 3 meters of ground to the approaching sea. But what can they do to stop the rising tide? John Goheen went north to the Arctic Circle to see if these people would become the first eco-refugees.
So it's really got to be unnerving that they're losing these hills that were out ahead of the houses, and there's only one hill left. And yet here we are to see a place that's falling into the sea, literally. For people whose lives depend on reading the story told by wind and waves,
I was born and raised here.
the Bering Sea is an open book.
All-time weather. It's from the north. It brings in Alapau weather, meaning cold weather.
Shish Maref, Alaska is home to 600 people. Virtually all of them are members of the Inupiat people. Native Alaskans with thousands of years of inherited knowledge of the land they call home and the sea that surrounds their small island just south of the Arctic Circle. But the home that people here have known so well for so long is being swept right out from underneath them.
It's eroding from under the old asphalt here.
Albert Ningaluk remembers when Shish Maref got its first paved airstrip back in the 1960s. And he'll never forget that it started washing away barely 20 years later.
It was a lot longer too, and about maybe 20, 30 feet have eroded off.
For the last 2 decades, sea waves have been eating away at the ground beneath homes that were built far from what used to be the beach. Global climate change, warming temperatures that are eroding the very ground beneath Shish Maref, is dramatically apparent here. It may be among the worst in the world. Wow. And that's what brings me here. Oh my goodness.
Whoa, I have to get a picture.
As director of a conservation group specializing in marine ecology, I wanted to see firsthand how one community is dealing with global warming. And I wanted my daughter, Melissa, to see it too. I'm really concerned about her future and the future of her brothers. I don't think it's over-dramatizing it to say that seeing this, experiencing it, knowing that it's happening, you know, we really don't have any choice but to do something about it. What do you think of that?
Pretty dramatic.
What's happening is that every year the Bering Sea freezes later and thaws earlier. Water that would normally be locked in ice is instead unleashed on this island, pounding Shish Maref with waves that wash away the shoreline, an average of 10 feet of it every year. So this is actually left from your house?
Yeah, from the first house, because my house used to be right here.
Minnie Olana says she remembers playing on the beach when it was hundreds of yards farther out than it is now. Then when she started raising her own children, the beach kept moving closer to her house until one day the waves were at the front door. So you were living in your house a year and a half ago, right here?
Yep.
So that must feel very strange to be standing where your house was.
Yeah.
And to see what's here now.
Look at it once in a while and remember.
Minnie didn't act quickly enough to do what some of her neighbors did.
We're hoping we'll have this done by today.
Physically move their houses from the side of the island, facing the open ocean, to the side fronting a more protected lagoon.
And this building was right just about on the beach. So, you know, if we had real bad storms, you know, it would be history.
Tony Waiawana's house moving crew has its hands full. They've rigged up a machine that moves an entire house by sliding it across the snow. The problem is that there isn't any snow, and skidding a house across bare pavement or rock is taking a toll on the equipment.
Our skis are buckling. They're only designed to move. They were only designed to move like 7 homes. But this is like the 19th home.
The federal government has spent millions of dollars on sea barriers and erosion control projects designed to protect the island. It seems like putting an expensive Band-Aid on a fast-moving cancer, but engineers say these projects serve an important purpose.
I wouldn't call it a Band-Aid. I would call it a fiberglass cast. It's intended to hold things together for long enough till we can come up with a permanent solution. And the work that we have out there, we feel will give the community the time it needs to be able to move away. If we did not install some riprap bank protection now, it's very likely there would not be a community left to relocate within 2 or 3 years. The erosion rates are so severe.
Call this Shish Maref Erosion and Relocation Coalition public meeting to order.
People in Shish Maref have been debating a permanent solution for some time.
There are very few studies that have been done that look at the impacts, the cultural impacts, the social impacts.
Some scientists predict that the island could be completely washed away in 15 years, which would turn Shish Maref residents into some of the world's first global warming refugees.
Yeah, I was born in 1942. I was born in a tent, June 26. And my grandmother delivered me, Mom said.
Any stranger who comes to Shish Maref usually ends up in Clifford Waiawana's kitchen for a taste of Clifford's cooking and a history lesson from someone who has seen how warmer weather has changed the migration patterns of animals that sustain the people here.
My birthday is June 26th. That used to be a good time to go walrus hunting. Nowadays, we're getting walrus second week in June. So they're migrating faster.
Right.
And then we no longer get them big icebergs from up north, you know, them turquoise blue icebergs. We don't see those anymore. We used to.
Clifford's a sort of goodwill ambassador for Shish Maref, hosting delegations that come here to see what's happening. He tells us that many outsiders say they want to help, but a lot of the offers come with strings attached. There was the $200,000 offer that came from the Smithsonian Museum.
So we're talking about $200,000. I say, wow, that sounds good. I say, do you have any reason for the expenditure of this money? And she says, yeah, it's to move your cemetery to the new site. I just says, ma'am, I'm more worried about the live ones than I am dead. Bye. And I hung up. $200,000 to move the cemetery.
When it became clear that the people living in Shish Maref would have to consider moving, one of the suggestions was that they simply relocate to larger communities like Nome or Kotzebue. For most of the people here, that was unthinkable. Compared to Shish Maref, those were big cities. Where would the villagers fish or hunt seals? And where would they pick berries? What global warming threatens here is more than just a village. It's a culture. It's the pending loss of their traditional lifestyle, the nature of their subsistence living, whether it's berry picking or fishing for salmon. It's all being turned on its head. And that too is happening so quickly that, you know, too quickly for people to really adapt to the pace of change that's underway. Melissa has a very different perspective.
People evolve. I mean, it's not as if these people are living the way they lived thousands of years ago. They're living, you know, they have the snow machines and all that.
Right.
So they've already given up a lot of their traditional ways of life, I think.
It's true that the people of Shish Maref have adapted to changing circumstances many times before this. They were once nomadic before they established a permanent settlement here. They drive all-terrain vehicles and powerboats, and most of them speak English as their primary language. But it's obvious that people here live a different lifestyle than most other Americans, using the tools of modern society to augment a subsistence lifestyle.
Right now, we're pretty much adapting to animal.
Clifford Waiawana says preserving that lifestyle is a top priority for villagers in Shish Maref. But it's hard when so much of the wisdom handed down from their ancestors no longer seems true.
You know, we had ice until about 1st of July then, and then the seasons were normal. Yeah. It's not like today. Nowadays, we can't predict what the weather is going to do.
One of the reasons I want Melissa to see Shish Maref is that I believe there are solutions to global warming. But those solutions may have to be implemented by her generation. We will only be here a few days, but I hope these few days can make a lifelong impression. Having my oldest child here is particularly meaningful to me because she's the future. And you know, maybe it sounds cliche or something, but if young people don't understand what's at stake in human terms that they can relate to, then we're in serious trouble.
With sea levels rising rapidly, it seems the people of Shish Maref have nowhere to run. Join me after the break to see what happens.